We see materialistic people living happily, so the guys that focus on the small stuff, or more happily than people of God, or people that have something great to focus on. So how do we reconcile that?
Okay, so the question is, we see people who are living for the small stuff happier than people who are living for the big stuff. Okay, I would say two things. You mentioned living for God there. I think let's leave aside religion, because I don't think everyone who is part of a religion is focused on the big stuff. I don't think the two are synonymous. I think there are a lot of people, maybe even most people, who would say that they are part of a religion but just blind followers. And so that's not going to help us in terms of the explanation. I think the explanation, if we want to look at it, is are people who are just into the small stuff more happy than the people who are into the big stuff? I don't think so at all. I would challenge that completely. The people who I see who have got a purpose in life that is greater than their own, a purpose in life that's greater than their own, are invariably happier. And that's actually borne out by the stats. So even if you look at the stats of happiest countries, you look at what's driving happiness, it's not GDP, it's not, it's not the things which are just based on the small stuff, if we can call it that. So there is a base level at which you need material security, you need basic shelter, food, clothing, right? So that's a pretty low level beyond which additional benefits have diminishing returns. So like it's not proportionate. So if I'm a billionaire, I'm not 1,000 times happier than I am if I'm a millionaire, right? So that's the difference. So I think just statistically, I don't think that's true. I don't think it's true that people who have purpose greater than themselves are less happy. I would argue that it's almost indisputably the other way around. And we see people who are just kind of engrossed in the small stuff and what it can do, like this, what it can do to somebody's state of being.
So then, just follow up. You see people like sometimes some people are in depression, and coming out of it, you see a lot of people hit the gym. They focus on themselves, just themselves, they care about other people. And you see their mental health boost a lot. So but would you tell them that that's not the end, and the end is therefore you have to kind of expand to other people, or can you say that you can cap out at there and be satisfied? Yeah, I think that's a really good, very good example. So if somebody is operating in the mode of ignorance, like for them to go straight from ignorance to goodness is a hard call, right? So for them to go from ignorance to passion, which is your gym, like that's a good thing, because that's a step up. So passion is a step up from ignorance. But if you just try and stay at passion, that's a tough thing to do. So what will happen with passion is, like, do you remember we were talking about it being fluctuating? So passion is going to be drawn either downwards or you draw it upwards to goodness. So the dream for modern society or materialistic society is get to passion and stay there, right? Just passion all the way. But because that's enjoyment all the way. But that's not the way the world works. Like, it's impossible to stay there. So having some activity, like for physical health, and is a must. Now, whether you do that in the gym or walk in nature or however you get that. But yeah, I think that's right. What you were saying earlier in terms of that's not the end goal. The end goal is, one is to raise consciousness, and the process of raising consciousness is ignorance to passion to goodness, but it's also to expand consciousness. And that means I become less selfish. Like a selfish person, I'm thinking about myself, right? And then it expands to my family, and then to my friends, and then to society. So the wider, and then to all species beyond the human species. So the wider we can expand our consciousness, the happier that we'll be. Just one more. And what would you say to people who have gone into ignorance in terms of depression because they have expanded themselves and been scarred from that, and therefore they want to they're scared of going from passion into goodness and kind of being selfless and thinking about other people, and they just want to cap out at me? Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think part of the issue is because society generally, at least in Western society, is quite an individualistic approach to life. So we're not even like, how do we learn about how to be less selfish? How do we learn how to be compassionate to others other than, saying, saying sharing is caring type level conversation, which is so mundane that it's not going to help you any. Like, where does that happen? So I think that's part of the process of spiritual life. Like, that's part of a genuine process of spiritual life, is that how can you in a healthy way, without destroying yourself, extend yourself to others. And for those who have, tipped themselves over the edge, there's obviously a process that they have to go through in terms of building themselves up again. But let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? So like there is a risk associated with this, but if it's a question of managing that and doing it in a way that's holistic, as opposed to always focusing on the extreme, right? Only me, and then like almost like a martyrdom of selflessness, which is like everything for somebody else and nothing for me. And like these two extremes, like we've spoken about several times now, these extremes, whenever you see the dichotomy of extremes, right? Like posed in this type of, you have to really worry about that. That's a serious red flag, because I can't think of an instance where the extremes are really the solution to anything. Yeah, okay, thank you. How are we doing on time? Okay, we have one more. Okay, go.
Just going back to the point that you made earlier. Going back to that point that you made earlier on the slide about percentage per day.
Yeah.
Percentage of our decisions per day that have free will.
Yeah.
Can we hit 100%? And if so, how? What does that look like?
In the material world, no, not according to the Gita. In the material world, these other actors, even goodness, has a cap. So in the material world, these other actors of karmas, modes of material nature, other actors at play, they're always there. So you can increase free will in the mode of goodness, but it's not 100%. And 100% free will, that's spiritual life. That is transcendence. So transcendence is the state of going beyond even goodness. And that's the perfection of spiritual life. That's the goal of spiritual life. The goal of spiritual life is the full expression of consciousness. The full expression of consciousness is free will. And what's amazing is that free will is the defining characteristic of love. So that full expression is love. And to enable love to manifest fully, one requires free will. So in the material world, the Gita's answer is no. You can get close by going up the modes to goodness, but you can't get to 100%. But through spiritual practice, and its culmination, that's the end goal. Okay. Okay, one more. Come on up. Yeah, come on up. Sorry, you have to come to the front.
It's slightly linked to Gopinath's question, but you were talking about decision trees,
Mm-hmm.
How the higher we go to the start of the tree, the more free will we have. So does that mean we had one ultimate beginning choice, but we had 100% free will?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's the logical. Yeah, if you trace back the decision tree all the way to the beginning, where did it start? Yeah, that's a nice question. According to the Gita and the kind of Vedic understanding, my response to the question just prior, the idea that place where where free will is 100% is transcendence. It's beyond the material. So the idea that the self, the Atma, is of such is of such a realm, is of such a place, context, where that free will was 100%, and where it was expressed through love. And our entry, if you like, into the material realm is the process through which that free will has, we've made our choices and kind of come down that decision tree. But at that original point, that was there. That was how it's described in terms of our original state of being, without any material conditioning or layers, and our situation in that context, in relationship, in that loving relationship with God, so Krishna. So that's the idea. That's the way that we came down that decision tree. Now you're going to ask, why did we go down that decision tree?
Yeah. If we are if we reach the transcendental stage where we're loving, we love God.
Yeah.
We have all knowledge.
Yeah.
Why would we make a choice?
Yeah. So that's the point that Krishna's making in the Gita, where he's saying that, we were at a state at a point in time. We're at a state right now that we can observe. And Krishna's saying that somebody who follows, and that's the idea of yoga. So yoga practice is the whole notion of yoga is to connect back with that original source, that original state of being. And that's why when you go through spiritual life, your experience of consciousness, and this is the test, actually. That's what I was saying, that a lot of people who follow religion, I'm not convinced that they are making free choice, because I think many people are kind of going down a blind alley in terms of how they're following religion. But the challenge posed in the Vedic tradition and in the Gita is that you make a choice. Like this is not a kind of a process that you're following blindly. You have to be consciously engaged here. And what's the test of that is that you have to be able to test your own progress. You have to be able to test whether or not this process is working for you. Not that you're just blindly following something based on something that's written in a book. So that might be what's written in the book may be the impetus for you to try something. It may be the start of something, the faith, to generate faith and understanding of what you're following. But that experience for those people who are on a spiritual path, they will testify to the notion that they experience consciousness rising and expanding in the way that we've been talking about, up the modes and expanding out to concern for others. And that reconnection, that yoga, and that's why that's called yoga, that process is called yoga, that reconnection to that original state. Krishna says, having once experienced this material atmosphere, we have memory of it and therefore won't come back. Why would we make the choice in the first place? This comes back to the point of that expression in that realm is one of love. And what we understand as the prerequisite for love is free will. The nature of consciousness, the nature of the self is to love. But the prerequisite of love, right? You cannot have love, in other words, without free will. So that free will is always retained with us. So for us to place that love towards the Supreme, to Krishna in the Vedic tradition, to Krishna, is our choice. It's not something that's forced upon us. And to place that, or to search for that love and that reciprocation of love, because love is a two-way street, from something other than the Supreme, from something other than Krishna, is also our choice. So we can be experiencing love somewhere, but also have the free choice and free will to decide to try and experience reciprocation of that love somewhere else. And that's what this world is. The world is the attempt. And if you want proof of that, just reflect on your day-to-day life. The attempt in this material world to experience love and to get reciprocation of love from everything and anything. We are constantly looking for what is that thing or that person who will reciprocate my love, because that is what I want ultimately. We say we want to be happy, right? Like, what do you want in life? I want to be happy. What do you want for your kids? I want them to be happy, right? So we use this term. What do we mean by that? If you go further, if you really try and understand what is it that we mean by that, What we mean by it is that we want the reciprocation of love. And part of the insanity of materialism is that we expect that reciprocation from inanimate things, not just from people. We expected that I will buy this or get that or do this or do that, and I will experience love. Now, we don't process it in that way, because if we did, we'd know how stupid it was. But we do process it like that. We do process the idea that I will get some happiness from this thing. But what do you mean by get happiness from this thing? Right? So it's a whole science, which the Gita is extraordinarily, it's only 700 verses. It's so extraordinarily insightful in just 700 verses to explain the system and the psychology with which we're living in. And maybe another session we can kind of get into what it is that generates happiness, like what is the underlying basis of happiness, and how do we engage with that. Okay, question? You need to come to the front, please. Thank you.
What I was going to say is, we talk about the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance a lot, but how do we apply it? Put it into our life?
Yeah, well, I wrote a book on this, but okay. So I'll start by saying that the modes of material nature are the best framework in existence. Like, so you can look at any management, any kind of whatever framework you want. The modes of material, in my opinion, obviously, are the most insightful, universal, applicable, tangible, practical thing that you could ever use to kind of navigate, help you navigate through life. Okay, how do we make it practical? There are some simple things that you can do. So with a complex subject, you can look at the basics of ignorance, passion, and goodness, and you can get a sense of, okay, I get it broadly. So then you can pick specific things. So in the Gita, Krishna actually lists either 28 or 29, I forget, things, charity, food, sleep, different things that he's talking about. And he categorizes them. What do those things look like or in the different modes? So in ignorance, it looks like this, passion looks like this, goodness, it looks like this, right? So you can start to experiment yourself. Start to experiment with your food, with your clothes, with the way that you speak, the words that you use. Anything, you take anything at all, right? Even the furniture in your house, like anything you want. And just experiment. Just do small experiments to see, does this help me? Because the Gita is supposed to be a handbook, okay? It's supposed to be practical. You should be able to experience the benefit of it. So try it with something simple, low risk, and then as you experience it, if you feel the benefit in it, just widen the range of things that you look at. And then you'll gradually be able to apply it to increase it. So you'll start off with the easy, I call it like gross, tangible stuff, right? So food, for example. And as you get good at it and you become more accustomed to it, and you can then start to apply it to more subtle and difficult things, like my attitude or my motivation in doing something. Am I doing it for myself or for somebody else? Or for, you can get into the detail of subtlety. But that comes with time. So I would say, practically, start with something simple, something that's in your control that you can do. And as you generate the experience from that experience itself will motivate and propel you forward to doing it across other subjects. Is that okay? All right, thank you. I am being told we need to end here. Thank you so much for your attention. I know we went over, but yeah, thanks for your attention.